Chapter 1581. Nole looked at Lisa without uttering a single word, and he did not give off any expression. His expression looked so unchanged that even Lisa could not be sure if he had believed in her explanation or not. But she was afraid that she would be found out later, so she came up with an excuse. "I won't bother you anymore. I will take my leave first. Contact me at any time if you run into any problem." She then left in a hurry. Nole looked down at the contact details in his hand, and his expression could not help but dim. On the other side of the mall, Daisy and the others were looking for Nole, and they saw him approaching them slowly. "Nole, why did you run away? And where did you go?" Daisy walked up to him angrily. "We wouldn't be able to explain this to your uncle if you were to get lost." Colton snorted. "Why would you worry that he'd get lost? Just how old is he?" Leah and Zafir did not say anything. Nole's gaze landed on Daisy's face. No matter how he looked at it, Daisy did not look like the type of person that the other girl had just described. She did not look like someone who would threaten others. In fact, he did not believe it. It was just that the memory fragments that had been flashing across his mind were somewhat consistent with what the girl had described. These things seemed strange. After a long while, he smiled. "Sorry, I've made you worry." Daisy handed him the coffee in her hand. "I bought this for you." He paused slightly, took the coffee from her, and gave off a faint smile. "Don't you hate me very much?" Daisy was stunned, then turned her face away and said confidently, "You're indeed quite annoying, but you're out with us now. If anything were to happen to you, we'd be scolded when we returned home." Her expression looked very straightforward, and she did not even try to conceal her hatred for him, but she did not show any malice. Real hatred doesn't look like this. The coffee in his palm still felt warm, just like the emotions that were surging in his chest cavity at the moment. The warmth that pervaded him enveloped his heart. Leah and Zafir went back first, and the three of them then took a car back to the Goldman mansion. While they were on their way home, Colton and Nole ignored each other. The atmosphere was so awkward that Daisy, who was sitting in the middle, felt extremely uncomfortable. Nole propped his hand against the side of his forehead, leaned against the car window, glanced at Daisy, who was sitting beside him through the corners of his eyes, and whispered, "Does your brother hate me because I surpassed him in grades in the past?" Daisy was startled. Colton choked on his own words and turned his head. "I can hear what you just whispered to my sister." The corner of Nole's mouth raised. "Then did I get it right? Your grades were indeed good, but my grades were not that bad either. So I didn't need to be jealous of you because of this." Colton crossed his arms. "Besides, we don't really need a reason to dislike someone, do we?" Nole ignored Colton and looked at Daisy. "Then what about you?" Colton reached out to maintain the distance between the two of them. "Hey, I'm not transparent." Daisy lowered her gaze and whispered after a while, I don't hate you." "Daisy, you." Colton was about to say something, but Nole interrupted him. "Can't she express her own thoughts?" Colton scoffed. "She's my sister, and you're not in the position to care for her. Besides, who are you to do so?" Nole smiled. "I may not be in the position to do so, but seeing that you're so protective when she's around, all I can say is that it's not necessary. You want to protect her, but you're overprotecting her. She's no different from the delicate flowers that have spent their whole life in a conservatory. Society won't show any mercy to people who are too simple and kind." Colton laughed and said, "Anyway, no matter whether it's now or in the future, her eldest brother and I have the ability to protect her. Our little sister doesn't need to be too good at everything because her eldest brother and I can do anything for her." Chapter 1582. Even if she wants to be a little princess who wants to be pampered and protected for all her life, we're both willing to do so. Whoever dares to bully her in the future will definitely be dealt with. Waylon and I will be her lifelong supporters. Nole shifted his gaze away. "Then have you asked her about the kind of life that she wants to live?" Colton snorted. That's not something that you need to worry about. Daisy remained silent throughout the whole conversation. I know that Waylon and Colton want to protect me and hope I will never need to face the world alone. However, I don't want to rely on them for the rest of my life. As Mom said, when people grow up, they must learn to be independent and distinguish the good from the bad by themselves. My grades are not as good as those of Waylon and Colton, and I can't even tell my own strengths. It's just that I filmed when I was a child, got praised, and had been living the life of a celebrity. Those were the reasons I had always thought that I was brilliant, but the fact is that there are still people who don't like me, boycott me, and even cheat on and betray me as they envy that I'm the princess of the Goldman, only because I've always had everything. Since birth. When I was a child, I got to film with the best actor and close many endorsement deals. I have countless fans, some of whom are still waiting for me to grow up. But I've never thought about what I want and what kind of life I want. Waylon and Colton are already thinking about going to the Victoria Business College, and I've always been at a loss when I think about my future. The car was parked in the courtyard of the Goldman mansion. After getting out of the car, Daisy returned to her room without saying a word. Nole noticed Daisy's strangeness and looked at her as she went upstairs, and he did not think about expressing anything. The next day, Daisy put all the books and homework on the desk. Waylon, Colton, I want a tutor. Waylon and Colton exchanged gazes as her behavior was really scary to them. Daisy, what's wrong with you? She replied solemnly, I want to improve my grades. Colton realized something. Are you stimulated by what we said yesterday? Waylon was silent. Daisy was extremely serious. I think Nole is right. You shouldn't have to protect me in every aspect of life, and I don't want to be protected by you all the time. It'll surely be a bad thing if I grow up not knowing anything. Waylon, Colton, I know I'm not as smart as you, but I want to give myself a real opportunity to grow too, and I can learn many things, just slower. She had thought about it all night and had figured it out. She could not move forward in life without any willful pursuit. She also wanted to be as smart, capable, and excellent as her brothers. Waylon suddenly gave off a smile and stretched out his hand to rub the top of her head. Since you want to treat your study seriously, I'll help you to study well. Colton added a little awkwardly, count me in too. Daisy smiled and nodded. Good. At that moment, there was nothing happier than having her brother's support. Nole stood outside the door, and the corners of his lips rose slightly when he heard the conversation that was going on between Daisy and her brothers inside the room. Throughout the next week, Daisy took a series of tuition classes with her brothers, trying her best to prepare for the courses she would have to tackle in the new semester before the start of school. Apart from Waylon and Colton, even Nole joined and became a tutor. Although Colton still disliked him, thinking that Nole's study system was still pretty good, she held himself back. Nolan and Maisie saw the scene of the four children sitting in the courtyard supervising each other during the tuition class. Chapter 1583. Maisie could not help but laugh. It's rare to see these four kids get along so well. Nolan wrapped his arms around her shoulders. After all, their goals are the same. Everyone is here to help Daisy improve her studies. Maisie turned to look at him and lifted her eyebrows. Can you see this? This is how our daughter should behave. If you were to continue to spoil her, what would others think of Daisy in the future? Wouldn't she be the princess of the Goldman that doesn't know anything? It'd be better for us not to have given birth to a daughter in the first place if all we did was spoil her into a useless lady in the future. And look at how the father and sons have spoiled her. He chuckled. I was wrong. I'll leave our daughter to you from now on. Sounds okay to you? Maisie supported her chin on her palm. It's time to cultivate her music, sports, cultures, and art skills too. Nolan was concerned. Will she be able to bear all that training? She took a glance at him. Both of our sons are handling it well, so why can't she? He laughed and hugged her from behind. Okay, it's your decision to make. She's on the brink of killing me. Daisy would attend tuition classes in the morning, rest at noon, and start with another course in the evening. Her daily schedule was very well arranged. Her learning speed had indeed improved significantly, and what improved her speed was the learning process that was taught to her by Nole, which was very simple and not complicated. Colton was upset about the outcome. How did you pick up the methods that he taught you so easily? Daisy pouted. What he taught me is very simple. The methods you and Waylon taught are too complicated, and I don't understand them. For example, there were several solutions for a question, but the solution that Waylon and Colton showed her was very complicated. And Nole taught her the simplest algorithm that would allow her to quickly come up with the answer. Colton turned his face away, wanting to ignore her. Waylon took a look at the equations, pondered, and nodded. The algorithm Nole taught her is simple and easy to understand. There are fewer steps, and the answer is correct too. I know, right? He said this is the right one for me. Algorithm for dummies. Colton snorted and turned away. What he means is that you're a dummy, and you're still bragging. Daisy pouted and bulged her cheeks. By the way, where's that fella? Colton realized that he had not seen Nole since morning and had not seen him go out either. Daisy stood up. I'll go and check on him. Colton and Waylon followed her immediately. Daisy came to Nole's room and knocked on the door. Nole's? But she did not get any response from the other side of the door. This fella should have woken up, shouldn't he? Colton twisted the doorknob and opened the door. Nole was indeed still lying on the bed. Look, I told you that he's still sleeping. Daisy felt that something was wrong and walked up to the bed quickly, only to realize that Nole's face looked a little pale when she got close. There was also a lot of cold sweat perspiring on his forehead. She stretched out her hand, placed it on his forehead, and exclaimed anxiously, Waylon, Colton, his forehead is so warm, it seems that he has a fever. Waylon turned around. I'll call the family doctor. Colton clicked his tongue. I'll pour him a cup of warm water. Daisy stood by the bed, looked at him, and then covered his forehead with her palm again. It felt astonishingly warm as if it was on fire. Nole slowly opened his eyes and saw Daisy's figure through his hazy vision. Waylon quickly brought the family doctor over. The doctor checked Nole's body temperature and prescribed some antipyretics for him. After taking his medicine, Nole fell asleep very soon. Colton and Waylon walked to the door. Seeing that Daisy didn't even make a move, Colton turned around. He's taken his medicine and won't die from this. Let's go. Daisy turned her head around and said, Colton, he has no one here to take care of him. It would be bad if anything were to happen. Chapter 1584. Just as Colton was about to speak, Waylon suggested, just let her stay. He's helped Daisy a lot these days. Whatever. Colton walked out of the room first. When they left, Daisy sat on the chair beside the bed and saw the empty cup on the table, so she got up and wanted to pour him a glass of water. Suddenly, she saw a note pressed under the phone that he had placed on the table. Daisy pulled out the note curiously and saw a very familiar cell phone number written on it. It was so familiar that Daisy recognized it immediately. It was not until the evening that Nole opened his eyes. He rested the back of his hand on his forehead, and he was no longer feeling so uncomfortable. He turned his head instantly and saw Daisy leaning against the back of the chair, sleeping soundly. He was stunned because he had assumed he was dreaming when he saw her figure earlier on. Nole got up, pulled the blanket off his body, and sat on the edge of the bed. His gaze landed on her face, and he could not help but chuckle when he saw the bead that was rolling down from the corner of her lips. The abrupt chuckle woke up Daisy. She subconsciously wiped the corner of her lips, met Nole's gaze, and got up in a hurry. Are you awake? He nodded. Yeah. Then the fever should have subsided, shouldn't it? Yeah. She heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. Since you're fine now, I'll leave the room first. Nole watched as she walked toward the door, and at this moment, he suddenly stopped her. Daisy. Daisy looked back at him. What's wrong? He gave off a faint smile. It's nothing special. I just want to say thank you. Daisy looked away awkwardly. It's nothing. After all, you've helped me a lot during this period of tutoring, so there's no need to thank me. She then walked out of the room. Nole was about to pick up his phone, only to find that the note that was originally placed under the phone had been moved. At the clubhouse, Lisa was sitting in her workplace, pulling her cell phone out of her pocket to check for an incoming call from time to time. It's been so many days, and Nole hasn't contacted me. I deliberately didn't tell Nole my name the other day, just in case Nole would tell Daisy about me, but I'm betting that Nole won't tell her about our encounter. Otherwise, given Colton's temperament, he would have come and threatened me long ago. The only thing that Daisy has is actually that smart brother of hers who spoils her all the time. Otherwise, how could she have exposed my lies? At this time, she received a text message on her phone. After going through the content of the text message, Lisa's day brightened instantly, and she saved his number immediately. Finally, I didn't spend all those days waiting for nothing. The next day, Lisa went out happily at noon as Nole had asked her to meet him at a restaurant. Sure enough, when she arrived at the restaurant, she saw Nole sitting by the window. She walked over with a smile. Nole, you finally contacted me. Nole still looked as indifferent as usual. Take a seat. Lisa sat down and looked around the restaurant. It was not the first time she had been to such a high-end restaurant. Daisy had taken her to such places before. A full meal here could cost her 1 month's worth of salary, but this amount of money was like a single drop of rain in a downpour to these rich kids. Nole, I thought you wouldn't contact me. Nole picked up the water glass and slowly drank from it. So, are you telling me that you've been waiting for me to contact you? Lisa paused for a bit and lowered her gaze. Because you don't remember me, I was worried that you'd suspect me. Being tender and gentle had always been her usual method, as putting oneself in a vulnerable position could arouse others' compassion and desire to protect her. Then should I trust you? His question made Lisa's expression slightly stiff. Nole put down the glass, lifted his gaze, and looked extremely calm. I asked someone to look into you. Lisa Fraser, you dropped out of Bassburg Private Middle and High School because of Daisy. Chapter 1585. Lisa's face turned slightly pale, and her hands resting on her thighs could not help but clench. Didn't he lose his memory? Why would he think of checking me out? Shouldn't he believe in everything that I said? Nole, I got expelled from school, but I was. Do you want to say that you were wronged and innocent? Nole saw through her at first glance. I may not remember anything from the past, but that doesn't mean that I'm dumb. Lisa froze in position and could not move a muscle. Actually, I almost believed in what you said the other day, but you shouldn't have reminded me about Daisy and her brother's feelings for me. Nole had actually believed in what she said that day, but not completely. She had told him that she was friends with Daisy, but she also told him that Daisy and her brother hated him. The contradiction and urgency in the message made him feel that he was being tricked. Thus, he had asked Edison to look into her background and phone number and then go to the private school to check her information, only to find out that she had been expelled, and the reason she had gotten expelled from school was related to Daisy. He had not stayed with the Goldman for long, but after getting to know the siblings during this period, he knew that Daisy and her brother would not do anything to get her expelled from school for no reason. She must have done something first. Lisa's shoulders trembled. She had no idea that her negligence and mistake were actually an extra reminder. After all, she had been afraid that her lie would be exposed. Nole, I'm sorry, I did hide the fact that I was expelled from school from you, but everything else is true. Don't you know that in order for you to cover a lie, you'll have to come up with countless more lies? Nole's eyes looked indifferent. You claimed that Daisy was the one who told you about my amnesia. However, you were expelled from school because of something that's related to Daisy. Thus, it's impossible for you two to still be in touch. Everything you told me the other day contained many lies, yet you still expect me to believe you. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Lisa was on pins and needles. Her face was pale as all blood had been drained from her cheeks. Nole got up and left. Lisa lowered her head. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she bit her lower lip. Why is everyone always siding with Daisy? Is it because she's the daughter of the Goldman? I don't have a wealthy family that can provide me with an extravagant background, so I can only achieve everything that I want in life by myself. So, there's no way I'll give up here. At the Goldman mansion, Daisy sat beside the garden in the courtyard in a daze and seemed to be very troubled. If I'm not mistaken, the phone number should belong to Lisa. But how did Nole get Lisa's cell phone number? I wanted to ask him that the other day, but I didn't know how to. Besides, even if he has Lisa's cell phone number, I'm not in the position to care about that. Thinking of this, she felt very depressed. Nole returned from outside, walked past the corridor, and saw Daisy sitting in the yard. As such, he stopped and walked toward her. Daisy noticed that someone was approaching. She was startled, looked up, and saw Nole standing next to her. She was stunned for a split second and asked, "Is something wrong?" "It's tuition time." She was astounded for a while. "Haven't we gone through everything?" Nole inserted his hand into his pocket. "I prepared the outline of your studies for the next semester in advance." Daisy brought all the books to the pavilion and got herself a pen to go through the test papers, while Nole sat beside her and guided her, correcting her mistakes from time to time. The servants who passed by looked at the pavilion and snickered. "Don't you think our young lady and the young master of the Noles make a good match? The two of them are well matched. Maybe there's a chance for some spark in the future?" Chapter 1586. Marriage between affluent families was very common and usually happened because their families were compatible in influence. However, even if Daisy and Nole knew each other but didn't grow up together, it was acceptable. The helpers were discussing. Daisy didn't hear because she was twirling her pen. Even though she looked like she was listening to Nole's explanation, she had actually zoned out. Nole tilted his head, looked at her, and noticed that she wasn't paying attention, so he tapped her head with a pen. "Focus." She rubbed the top of her head. "Why did you do that?" "If you don't focus, I won't continue tutoring." He seemed to be threatening her. She pouted and scratched her head. "Can I ask you something?" Daisy was the type that couldn't keep things in and wouldn't be able to focus, especially when there was something that she just had to ask. Nole could guess what she was going to ask. "Go ahead." Daisy frowned. "How did you get Lisa's phone number?" He was right, so he lazily rested the side of his head on his hand. "Oh, that's your question?" "I went to see her today." Daisy fell silent. Lisa and Nole used to be schoolmates, so it would be normal for them to know each other, but Nole had lost his memories. He remembered Lisa, but not herself. Nole probed. "She told me that she's your friend." Daisy paused, then looked down in silence. She and Lisa used to be friends, but that was just what she thought. Lisa might have never thought of her as a friend and even treated her as a joke behind her back, but she was so nice to her, she was just treating her the wrong way. Daisy believed that friends should share things, but she was the only one giving, and after Lisa got presents from her, it flued her love for superficial things. Daisy pressed her lips together. "Did she say that?" Nole nodded and looked away. "So I was curious." "Forget it. You won't understand." Daisy didn't want to talk about her bad past. All she could say was that she had never mistreated Lisa. Nole stared at her profile. He wasn't questioning her, he just wanted to know what she thought. No matter how they were, there was no need to talk behind their backs. Lisa was very different from Daisy when it came to this. That was why he didn't trust Lisa. Meanwhile, Lisa went to see Ivanka, who managed the underground business. When Ivanka agreed to help her punish her brother, Evan, it was the first time she felt the power to order people around. She even made the way Ivanka was able to do whatever she wanted her life goal. She had money and could order people around. There was nothing that couldn't be done if she wanted to. Ivanka lit up a cigarette and glared at Lisa. You wretched girl, you need to know when to stop. I've helped you find a job, and now you want to order my men around? Lisa immediately explained, Ivanka, I'm not trying to order your men around. I just want to borrow them. There's no difference. She flicked the ash away and squinted. You're so young yet so ambitious, trying to use me to execute your plan. At that point, Ivanka stopped smiling. You should know that I'll be held responsible if something happens. That won't happen. Lisa looked sincere. If it works, I'll be able to bring you big rewards. Chapter 1587. Ivanka suddenly laughed, took a drag, and slowly let the smoke out. I've never seen a girl your age who's so ambitious. She dropped the cigarette into her beer, it fizzed and went out. I'm going to trust you since you seem so confident. However, if this fails, you're going to suffer, get it? Lisa bit her lip. Since she was going to carry it out, she could not fail. Don't worry. Ivanka got up and left. In the corridor, the person walking behind Ivanka asked, Do you really trust her? Are we letting her do whatever she wants? He couldn't understand why Ivanka would help Evan's sister. She was so young yet was already sucking up to people with power. It was terrifying. Ivanka smirked. You won't understand. This girl is going to be someone in the future. If I help her, she will owe me one. But aren't you afraid that a person like her will betray you? Ivanka was expressionless. When someone crosses to the dark side, they can no longer be free. Either I tame her and make her work for me, or I get rid of her, which I'm capable of. 2 days later, Nole got a call saying that his uncle, Tristan, was in a car accident. Nolan, Maisie, and the children were on the way to the hospital. Tristan just got out of surgery and was still unconscious. The doctor said that he wasn't in critical condition. Other than a fractured leg, nothing else was badly hurt. Nole sat in the chair quietly. Nolan and Maisie were in the corridor, speaking to the doctor and making arrangements. Daisy walked into the room, stood next to him, and comforted him. Don't worry, he's going to wake up soon. Nole nodded. He was deep in thought while staring at the unconscious Tristan. He stayed with him while everyone left. Edison visited in the afternoon and stood behind him. Sir, I've checked at the police station. The driver fell asleep at the wheel and ran into your uncle's car, but Mr. Knowles was lucky because a passerby pulled him out from the wreck. Otherwise, something worse might have happened. The accident was so severe that fuel leaked from the car. The car might have exploded if he hadn't been dragged out in time. Nole frowned. Are they sure that it's an accident? Edison paused. Are you suspecting something? Nole was young, but sharp. He knew that. Nole didn't reply. It had happened very suddenly, so he was just being careful. The next day, Daisy visited with a fruit basket. Tristan was already awake and was having some soup. He looked up, saw Daisy, and smiled. Hello, Daisy. Nole turned to look at her. Daisy placed the fruit basket on the counter. Uncle Tristan, my grandfather is worried about you, so I came to visit. Tristan smiled and waved his hand. I'm fine. Tell him not to worry. Something came to his mind, so he looked at Nole. By the way, Nole, before I fainted, I saw that the girl who saved me was your old schoolmate. If not for her, I might not have been able to see your dad anymore. Nole narrowed his eyes and smiled. My old schoolmate? Daisy looked at them and had a weird instinctive feeling. I've forgotten her name. Nole, send Edison to find out. I have to thank the person who saved my life. Chapter 1588. Nole was quiet. Suddenly, the door opened. Dad. Lisa froze on the spot with a bouquet of flowers in her arms. She entered the wrong room so that Tristan would see her. She knew that Nole would be there, but didn't expect Daisy to be as well. I'm sorry, I thought this was my dad's room. She was going to leave when Tristan called out to her. She looked back. Yes? Have you forgotten me? You saved me the other day. Tristan didn't sound as distant as the other day because she was the person who had saved his life. Lisa pretended to remember. It's you, sir. Your father is admitted to the hospital too? She looked down and smiled. Yes. Tristan suddenly remembered what she had told him. Her father was sick, and she worked to help lighten the family burden. You're such a loving child. The praise didn't make Lisa happy, but instead made her feel ashamed because Daisy was well aware of her family's situation. Lisa stood in the room, and the praises Tristan showered her with made her worried that Daisy would expose her. Luckily, Daisy didn't speak. At that moment, Nole calmly said, if she were caring and visited her father often, how could she have mistaken his room? Lisa grabbed the corner of her blouse and looked down to avoid Nole's sighs. No, my dad was transferred to another room. All right. Tristan frowned and looked at Nole. Why are you putting her on the spot? She's your schoolmate. You can ask Daisy. Nole had lost his memories, but Daisy might know her. Nole stared at Daisy. Even Lisa carefully peeped at her. Daisy pressed her lips together, balling up her fist. If she said no, it would mean she was framing her. She didn't hate Lisa. They had a torn friendship, but that didn't mean that she held a grudge. She just didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. Lisa used to be their schoolmate, and it was a fact that couldn't be changed. Thus, she nodded. Lisa breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that Daisy had a soft heart. Even if they were no longer friends, Daisy might just trust her once more if she went to speak to her. Nole left the room without saying anything. Tristan sighed after seeing that. Nole's temper is so different from his parents'. He's so hard to read. Daisy spoke. Uncle Tristan, I'll go check on him. Tristan nodded, and Daisy left without looking back. Nole hadn't gone far, so Daisy was able to find him at the end of the corridor and approached him. Nole, are you leaving Uncle Tristan there? He looked out the window with his back facing her, so she couldn't see his expression. Daisy noticed that he was in a foul mood. Are you angry? But why? Nole suddenly turned around to face her. Don't you know how to lie? She was stunned. Why would I lie? You didn't want to expose her lie just because you used to be friends? Daisy paused and looked into his calm, deep eyes. Was he referring to what Lisa had said in the room? She frowned, then looked at her toes. But she used to be our schoolmate, that's true. Chapter 1589. That's not what I meant. Daisy didn't understand. Nole approached her. You knew who she was, but didn't call her out. Daisy, even if you lied and denied that she was a schoolmate, my uncle would be careful of her too. Had Lisa saved Tristan's life by coincidence, or was it planned? Tristan trusted her now. Daisy's lips parted. But she saved him. Do you think it was a coincidence? What else could it be? Nole took a deep breath and pinched the bridge of his nose after a long pause. I finally know why your two brothers are so worried about you. She looked at him, not understanding. There's a difference between being kind and being dumb. Nole walked past her. Especially for a protected girl like you, it's normal that you've never seen how cruel people can be. Daisy turned and yelled, Knowles, you just called me dumb. Knowles walked into the elevator without looking back. Daisy walked out of the hospital's main doors and was angry yet sad upon thinking about what Knowles had said. But what did Knowles mean about Lisa, saying that she knew what kind of person Lisa was? Hadn't he lost his memory? How did he know what had happened between Lisa and her? Daisy. Daisy paused but didn't look back. She knew it was Lisa. Lisa walked toward her and stopped next to her. Daisy, I know that you still hate me. I was wrong and too greedy. Even if we can no longer be friends, I hope to reconcile with you. Lisa knew Daisy's personality. She believed that Daisy was just angry about what had happened in the past and didn't really want to cut her off. She believed that if she apologized, Daisy would agree to reconcile. She remembered how Daisy would agree to everything she asked. Everyone thought that she was taking advantage of Daisy, but in reality, Daisy wouldn't leave her alone. Lita was very confident that if her brothers didn't get involved, she would be able to gain Daisy's trust again. Lisa. Daisy slowly turned to face her. Do I really look dumb? Lisa paused, then smiled awkwardly. Not at all. Since I'm not, why would I keep believing in what you say? Daisy looked down and stopped speaking. Lisa held her hand. Daisy, I'm sincere and know I've made a mistake. Could you forgive me one more time? Daisy looked at her hand and looked up after a while. Is your father sick? It was hard for Lisa to hide her joy. She knew that Daisy was still easy to manipulate. Yes, he's been sick for a while now. She then added, there must be some misunderstanding with Nole. Daisy, you're the best. Could you help me explain to him? I'm sure he will listen to you. Daisy pretended to unintentionally pull her hand back and forced a smile. Since your father's here, why don't you bring me to him? I haven't seen him in a while. Lisa's smile froze. Daisy was curious. What's wrong? No. It's just that my dad isn't in his best mood, so it wouldn't be good. Another time? She knew very well that her father wasn't sick. She would be exposed if Daisy insisted on visiting. Chapter 1590. Lisa could only hold her back. Daisy nodded. All right, I'm going home then. She turned and got into the car. Lisa watched the car drive away and bit her lip. Did she have to hope that her father would fall sick to avoid getting exposed? The car was parked in the suburbs. Daisy lowered the window, looked at a building not far away, and pondered for a long time. The driver turned to ask, Miss, are you looking for someone? Daisy said, I'll be right back. She got out of the car and went upstairs to Lisa's home. It had been 3 years, so she didn't know if Lisa still lived there. She knocked, but there was no reply after a long wait. The neighbor was leaving when she turned and saw Daisy. Who are you looking for? Hello ma'am, does Lisa and her father still stay here? You're here to see Lisa? The neighbor showed disdain. Yes, they do, but how could girls your age not study? That's terrible. Daisy was startled and frowned. Lisa, dropped out? She had assumed that Lisa would switch to another school instead of dropping out. You don't know? The neighbor looked at her. You don't look familiar and look like a decent girl, unlike those friends of hers. You should hang out with her less. Lisa had a bad reputation in the community. The parents of the children of their age forbade them from spending time with her. And Lisa, just like her dropout brother, Evan, stopped studying and started getting involved with the wrong crowd. She was so young, but wore lots of makeup and dressed provocatively. But, ma'am, Lisa told me that her father is sick, so I came to visit. Her father is fine, not sick at all. He's at work. As the neighbor left, she was mumbling, Mr. Fraser must be miserable with children like these. Daisy returned to the Goldman mansion and realized that Nole hadn't come back. Daisy didn't go to the hospital for the next few days, and Nole never came back. After half a month, Tristan was discharged. Nobody expected that when he asked the Goldman for dinner, he would bring Lisa along. Maisie was surprised because who would believe that Lisa would become Tristan's savior? Colton looked at Lisa with disdain and coldness, while Lisa didn't dare to even look at him. Waylon and Daisy didn't show any expression. Tristan, did you say this girl saved you? Asked Nicholas. Tristan nodded. Yes, if it weren't for this young lady, I wouldn't be sitting here. She used to be Daisy, Colton, and Nole's friend from elementary. Nicholas didn't know what had happened between the children and was surprised. Really? Colton smirked. So what? We don't know her that well. After Colton said that, the air changed. Lisa's nails dug into her palm while she froze in her seat with her head low, looking sad. Maisie looked at Lisa, but kept quiet. This child had gone through a tough time because of Daisy's actions. She could have gotten Daisy to help her because of that, but her heart was too dark. Maybe that was just human nature. Daisy had used the wrong method, which fueled her greed. Nonetheless, she would have rejected the presents if they were really friends.